Hey, so hi everyone. Today I'll be talking about some Imperium cards. Okay, and I'm not talking about all the Imperium cards. If you want me to talk about that in a video, I can. And just leave a comment in the comments and I might get to it. What I'm gonna talk about is how do you look at cards? Okay, how do you look at a card and how do you judge it for what it's worth? Okay, how do you identify when it is good and when it is bad, and how do you actually play out this card? Okay, so these are five commonly misunderstood or misplayed cards, right? People either don't know why they're buying it, or people don't know, think that it's good or think that it's bad, and hence, there is a lot of different ideas about this card. Okay, so first of which, we're going to talk about Truth Trance. Truth Trance is a very basic card. Okay, it has Truth Trance, it has a Bene Gesserit tag, it has access to all the faction spaces. Okay, so one thing that we're gonna first look at, right, is that I do believe that a lot of players are starting off with a base game plus a X emo reference. Okay, so these are, we're talking about cards in terms of uprising. Okay, and Truth Chance in terms of uprising, right, is very different from base game plus X plus immortality. So what happens in base and X and immortality? Any card with which has faction access is very good, because in base game, right, faction access is half a point. Um, and thus you always want to play faction access in base game. However, in uprising is often not a one-to-one because of how the game's combat works, right? The game kind of becomes more fluid, more dynamic. And when you're going to a faction space, a lot of times, unless you're playing spies, there is quite a big trade-off. Okay? So if you look at the different faction spaces, what happens in terms of relative tempo to a non-faction space, you will lose tempo, be it in terms of like the number of troops or in terms of being able to deploy, being able to develop your long-term um, advantages, right? So when you go to faction spaces, you're losing tempo. When you're going to non-faction spaces, you're gaining tempo. Okay, so two very big different ideas. When you're going to faction spaces, yes, you're gaining half a faction point in most cases. Okay, but when you're going um to an active space, right, you are gaining tempo and you're gaining access to combat and a lot of other fun things. So in this case, right, faction access in Uprising is not as good as in base X and Immortality. So first things first, in Uprising, faction access is not as powerful. You gain faction points, but lose on tempo. Okay, and this is due to the nature of combat. Okay, so when you go to faction space, normally you're losing out on combat, even if, like, I mean, Fremkit and Desert Ambush, I think there are slight exceptions, but um there are also some drawbacks to that. Okay, so this is something that you need to understand first. So if that's the case, right, is a card that has just merely faction access good? All right. So we know that faction access is not as powerful. So just faction access is not good. Okay. So when you're buying this card, right, if you're buying it for, oh yes, it has 4 faction access, you need to rethink how you think about uprising. Okay, you need to rethink how you think about uprising, because faction access is just not as good. All right. So if faction access is not as good, this card actually is too slow, right? And who wants it? Um, Maybe you might say Staban wants it, but uh, does Staban actually want a diplomacy? Maybe. I guess it can be good, right? But um, who really wants an extra diplo to play? Maybe someone who has sword master, maybe, right? Maybe someone who um but let's think about it in the ideas that we have framed it already, right? So we have two main player bases. One is the wolf, and then after that you have the sheeps and the rabbits and the turtles. Okay, the rabbits and the turtles, right? Generally want similar cards for the most of it. The turtles are a bit more flexible in what cards you can pick up, right? But so if you're a wolf player, does this lead to late game advantages? No, right? And the reason is does not lead to late game advantages. Okay, what about the rabbit player? Does the rabbit player want this? Yes, the rabbit player wants to go to faction, but the rabbit player wants to go to faction and the rabbit player wants to buy spice with flows. Alright? So in in essence, if you're just playing this, you probably need to draw a card, and then after it means you either need to have a spy down or you need to go espionage or frame kit, right? So the rabbit player does not really want to see this, and the reason is it's too slow. Okay, so the rabbit player doesn't want to see this as well, right? So who wants to see this card, right? So 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 when you're buying this card, right? If you're buying it as okay, I'm buying this card as a standalone. This card is bad. But what happens that when is this card good? This card becomes better, right? When it becomes a Bene Gesserit enabler. Okay? If you have something that requires another Bene Gesserit card in play, Truth Trance kind of allows that to happen, right? So it becomes a Bene Gesserit enabler. It's not the best Bene Gesserit enabler, but it is a Bene Gesserit enabler, right? Um, okay, so it is a Bene Gesserit enabler. Okay, so you should buy this card because it's a Bene Gesserit enabler. Um, so what does it enable? Right? Let's just pull out the few cards that we care about. Okay, there's still one more. Okay, so these cards care about whether you have a Bene Gesserit card in play. Not all of them you actually want to actually play, right? But when you have these cards, you can consider buying Truth Trance. I'm not saying to buy these cards, right? When you identify, look at these cards, you should look at them by themselves, right? You should look at them by themselves and think about whether this card is good for you, alright? And buy them, right? But if you happen to have these cards, then suddenly Truth Trance becomes a little bit better. Is it better than other four costs? No, then that's another question you should ask, right? But you need to understand when is this, why, what scenario do I actively want to play this card, right? You want to play this card if you want to have an enabler that goes to faction. Okay, most of the time in Uprising, when you buy this card, you're buying it for this particular reason. You pick up some Tread and Darknesses, then you buy Truth Trance, and then after that, the payoff is like the payoff combined is worth it, and so then you have to try to figure out how to get to it. How do you maximize it? Okay, a lot of times also requires like Sword Master, but so Truth Trance is one of those cards that I think a lot of players, if you come from XMO, you would buy it because it looks good. It looks good on paper, but a lot of times it is a trap. It's a trap because it makes you play actions that don't win you the game. You get faction points, but it's too slow. You lose to other wolf players, or in base uprising, I will call them sheep players, and in bloodlines you lose to other rabbits, or you lose to other wolves, right? So that's why you should not buy Truth Trance by itself, right? So one thing, so what we talked about here is that we looked at, if a card just gives me faction access, right, it is too slow. It must give me faction access plus do something else, right? And because the wolf player doesn't want it, the rabbit player doesn't want it, and like, so we look at it from that perspective, right? And then also ask yourself, in what situations do we want to buy it? Okay, so with that frame of mind, right, can we talk about space time folding? So in terms of space time folding, how would you evaluate this card? All right. So think about it for a moment. Do you like this card? Do you not like this card? Okay. So I used to watch one of these players play quite highly ranked, and I always question his decision on buying space time folding. Right? He said it has faction access. It's good. So one thing about space-time folding in particular is that space-time folding goes to either highliner or deliver supplies. Right, deliver supplies gets you one water, and highliner actually doesn't mean too much in bloodlines anymore. It's still strong, right? Don't get me wrong, but I mean, it's expensive. You want to do it once. I don't know if you. It doesn't guarantee you the combat anymore, so you don't really need like highliner access. All right. So in terms of like bloodlines, when you think of this card, is this card good? Right. So we're gonna hold it to the same principles. Okay. Does the wolf player want this? Right. Let's ask ourselves. The answer to that question is no, because highliner doesn't define the tier 3 combats anymore. Alright, you don't need highliner to get that much strength into combat. Right? There are other ways you can get strength into combat. You don't really need highliner. Right? So does the sheep player want this? Or the rabbit player wants this? Well, maybe, right? If it can, maybe if you can go faction and buy Spice Muscle. Okay? So then the question is, when can you go faction and when can and buy a Spice Muscle? First you need to look at your faction influence with spacing. Is it less than 2? Right? So it means that the times you go there will be useful, right? It won't be a dead faction point. And right, and then can you buy spice from stores, right? So if you discard a spacing card, you get to draw 2 cards, right? Or and if you play, you can discard a card. But when you play, you can like kind of plus 1 card in hand, right? And that plus 1 card in hand can enable you to buy spice from stores, right? So then after that, so as long as you're able to buy a spice must flow, right, with it, then suddenly, or like potentially buy a spice must flow, right, then it becomes decent, it becomes playable. Right, so that's so there are some payoffs, right? So there's some payoffs if you have, then obviously this becomes good, right? If you have corrupt bureaucrat, if you have Spacing Guild's favor, then cards that discard cards that are Spacing Guild cards obviously become way better, right? So then you consider all the cards that discard Spacing Guild cards, right? But the Spacing Guild card that most sheep players have is Spice from Slow. Once you have one Spice from Slow and you don't have the friendship, you have one Persuasion lying around, you can just pick it up. Sure. But at the same point of time, if you don't have this combination, what does Deliver Supplies get you, right? Okay, and that's the question. Because when you're buying this card, you're committing to going to Deliver Supplies. What does Deliver Supplies get you, right? The Deliver Supplies as a space, right, is only good if it enables something else, right? Water is not the end point. Water doesn't win you the game, okay? But water is important because water does get you things that win you the game, right? So the water needs to convert into something. What does the water convert into? Maybe you need to put a sandworm in. Maybe you need to go to research station to finish some contracts, or maybe it gets you deep desert spice, right? So if the answer to if I go to Deliver Supplies, I can fulfill this objective, right? If I can get water, it, like I can have this long term plan of doing this, right? And if this is your means of getting water and this is your plan, then you consider space time folding, right? But by itself, right? By itself, if it's on the row, you have like, let's say you have 4 precision, 3 precision, you buy something, and then the space time foldings in the row, and then you just say, oh, okay, it has faction access, let's just buy it. It becomes a dead card in your deck, right? Because you don't want to reveal for 1 precision and not see the other cards that you have bought, right? So most of the time, this is a dead card as well, right? But it's but there are certain conditions that you can fulfill in order for this to be a good card. Okay? In contrast, there's another spacing card that allows you to go to all the faction spaces, and if you discard a spacing guild card, you can then after that draw 2 cards. So that spacing card is different and you have to think about it completely different as well. But in terms of space-time folding, right, you have to marry it to the board game, to the board space. And what does Deliver Supplies get you? That is the fundamental question when you should ask yourself when you're picking up this card, right? Like imagine other games. Like how often are you wanting to go to Deliver Supplies past round 2? Okay? Watch the games you play. How many times do you actually play your Diplo to go to Deliver Supplies? And why do you do it? You do it either to get water for a research station, to buy some card, or you get water to um for deep desert spice. Like it has to feed into this mold or this like this long term plan. And that is what you're committing to when you're buying space time folding. Okay. So the next card we're gonna talk about is Rebel Supplier. A lot of people don't like this card. They look at this card and think, oh, this is a Margot card, right? Margot can play spies on blue spaces, on city spaces, and then I'll play my Rebel Supplier to go to a city space and I'll get 2 troops and then I'll win the combat. Right? So I think a lot of people also call this mini strike fleet, right? People love strike fleet. But somehow people hate Rebel Supplier. Why do people hate Rebel Supplier? Right? People hate Rebel Supplier because it has no persuasion. Well, Strike Fleet has 1 persuasion, right? Is it a lot better? Right? But you never reveal Strike Fleet. But you say, oh no, if Strike Fleet can go to faction, right? So, but in the scheme of things, how important is it to go to faction? Right? It is important, but it's not like make or break. So, in terms of like, let's put it through the same lens again. Does a Wolf player want this? Does the Rabbit player want this? Well, I can see the red player doesn't want this. But does the wolf player want this? I'll say yes. Right? It allows you to build up long-term rewards. Either by getting troops and winning combat, so you get rewards that you can kind of funnel into your late game combat engine, or you can reveal it for a spice, which then the spice can also be put into a long-term combat reward. I think people look at this card and go like, revealing a spice from soul is bad because there's no persuasion, right? So they think revealing for spice is bad. But at the same point in time, people love the commander. People love driven. How do we how do people love driven but hate rebel supplier? So you can say like, okay, it reduces my persuasion, sure. But same point in time, like if you have strike fleet, how often are you um going to reveal it? Let's say no, but strike fleet, gets me a spy when I buy it, and then rebel supplier doesn't. So okay, so maybe the condition to buy this card is that you have plans for a spy on a blue space, right? So then after that, right? Then suddenly, like it becomes more clear. Can I get a spy on a blue and city space? Am I trying to fight in these combats? If the answer to both questions is yes, right, then Rebel Supplier becomes a pretty good card, right? It becomes strike fleet, right? A lot of more high-end players have picked up Rebel Supplier and feel like it's very, very strong, right? But how come, like, when it comes to Strike Fleet, like, it's so much better? And is it really that much better? Strike Fleet is better, okay? Don't get me wrong, Strike Fleet is better. But how does Rebel Spy get such a bad reputation? Okay, so can I get a spy on a blue or city space, right? So very often, when you get Rebel Supplier, you just need one payoff, right? You just need to put down one spy, you play it, then it's pretty good. The I think like even if you draw Rebel Spy, you aren't too sad about it. You get one spice, right, and one dagger, which is relevant. The main issue is that when you people hate this card because like you want high persuasion and then you draw this card, right? But as wolf player, actually you don't really mind, right? There are a lot of cheaper cards that actually can help you win the game, right? And we haven't even talked about one of the big parts about this card. It has a fragment tag, right? So what exactly do these fragment decks want to do, right? And that is another question you need to think about, right? So how do you evaluate this card? I think Rebel Supplier is super playable, and um, if set up for it, I will definitely buy it, right? It can lead to meeting your objectives as a wolf player, right? And if you happen to have a very strong fragment deck, it's a great addition, right? So then after yourself, let's ask ourselves, what does a fragment deck want to accomplish? So the next card we're going to talk about is Ecological Testing Station. Okay, so this card, pause for a moment and think about it. Right, water. Okay, it has fragment access, it has city access. If you spend 2 water, you can draw 2 cards. Very expensive. Um, if you have it reveals for 1 persuasion, and if you have fragment bond, you can get a water. So how would you think about this card? Okay, how do you think about this card? A lot of people, when you look at this card, right, the first thing you that jumps at you is that, wow, I can draw 2 cards if I spend 2 water, right? 2 water is really expensive. drawing 2 cards is very powerful, and but it only goes to blue and city access and Fremen access. So immediately, that's what people are drawn to, right? Oh, I can draw 3 cards, I can draw 4 cards. But I'll tell you that when I look at this card or when I play this card, the part that excites me is the reveal, right? You can get 1 persuasion and you can get 1 water, right? So why is water good? Okay, why is water good? Why am I drawn to the bottom? So this one, let's talk about it differently. Okay, to answer this question, we must ask ourselves, what do you want in a Fremen deck? This is different from Emperor decks or Spacing decks or Bene Gesserit decks, right? They all want specific things to happen, right? But what do you want in a Fremen deck? In a Fremen deck, right? Let's pull out some of the Fremen cards. Okay? I'm gonna pull out some of the cheaper ones, some of the ones that you often can pick up and that form like kind of the core of a Fremen deck, right? So what do you want in a Fremen deck? You want to hit Fremen Bond and you want to draw more cards. You don't need to draw all your Fremen cards together unless you have Stilgar, right? But you want to have hit Fremen Bond, right? So what you want to do, you want to hit Fremen Bond and draw more cards. Right? So why is water good, or why is on review water good? If you happen to play this Fremen deck in Uprising, be it Uprising or Uprising Bloodlines, right, you realize that by having water, you are able to go to research station. Research station is one of the main places of power for this Fremen deck, right? And if you have water, you can go to research station. And if you can go to research station and it gets you more water, then suddenly like, hey, this engine is rolling, right? Because it draws you more cards and allows you to hit Fremen Bond, right? Ecological station is one of the pieces that gives you Fremen Bond and allows you resources to draw more cards, right? Because water can be converted to card draw. Okay? So water can be converted to card draw. So that's why ecological taxation is good on reveal, which is why still tense is good on reveal, right? And then after that you have payoffs like Watermaster, alright, and then you have like all the other like Fremen payoffs. I think there are more, but we'll list the ones here, right? And so there are more Fremen payoffs, but you don't want to hit all your Fremen cards together. You just want to be able to churn through your deck, right? And so on review, water is good, and you will buy ecological taxation when you want a Fremen deck, alright? So you don't buy this card. Um, you don't buy this card because you have like, oh, I have water lying around. Because most often, right, late in the game, you don't really want to go to Fremkit or Desert Ambush because normally you go there earlier in the game to maximize the ability of it being a combat space, right? And it going to a city space for you to spend 2 water, there's already like places for you to spend 2 water and to draw 2 cards, right? So it's not incredible in that sense, right? You might as well just put a spy down and then it's so much cheaper anyway. So playing it to a city is not good. Playing it, you don't really want to play it to Fremen like late in the game. So in that sense, right, a sheep player could want this if he happens to have a lot of water lying around, but unlikely that he wants this, right? But then a wolf player who has picked up, if you have picked up Watermaster, or you have picked up like let's say if you picked up Watermaster first, then after you pick up Rebel Supplier, like ecological taxation is like it's a very natural next step that you pick up, right? But picking this up first is not great, okay? Because it's blank on both sides if you pick it up first, right? So so now you see this the conditions to buy ecological test station is when I have a fragment deck, right? Which might sound straightforward, right? But then also you need to understand why am I buying this card, right? Am I buying this card for the reveal? Am I buying the card for the on play? And most of the time, other than your last action of the game, you would play it to reveal for a water. Okay. So now let's talk about Maula pistol. So same, I want you to take some time to think about this card. I think this card is also one of the cards that is misunderstood. People say like, why would I want non-faction access, right? That doesn't have 2 persuasion, that draws me a card. Okay, think about it. Why do I want Maula pistol? Okay, if you have come to the conclusion that it is great in the Fremen decks, good job. Right? It's great in the Fremen decks. Because what do the Fremen decks want? They want to hit Fremen Bond and draw more cards. Right? So so let's say if I have Watermaster, I will try to pick up Maula Pistol. If I somehow stumble into a test station, Maula Pistol is great as well. Right? So if I have some payoffs, then Maula Pistol is good. If I have Southern Elders, Maula Pistol is good. Alright, so don't merely judge a card based on faction access, right? Think about what scenarios and what roles want this card, right? So there are some cards that when you look on the role that say, okay, this is um a card that if I build my deck around, I can win the game. There are some cards like that. I think most of people have identified these cards. And then what cards, right, do I need to kind of build around, right? What cards are the cards that we can build around to salvage a game from these cards that are all unplayable or all considered unplayable? I think you ask a lot of people say pistol is unplayable, people say test station is unplayable, people say rebel supplier is unplayable, people say space time folding and truth trance are unplayable. But I think in the multitude of games that I have played, right, I think that you just need to be able to identify the situations where they are playable, right? Or how do you find yourself in situations where they are playable? And I'm not saying to force you to buy anything. There are a lot of times when I'm in the game and these cards are in the row, but I am not set up for it. And even if I buy it, it's a dead card, right? And I just buy it prepared away. There are sometimes you must acknowledge that as well, right? But a few moments you can let it shine, you need to be able to identify them. And how you identify them is you think about, and I hope that you can look at all the cards again and think about it in this lens, right? Like, when do I hope to play this, right? And what exactly does it help me to do in terms of ideas of from a wolf, from a rabbit, from a turtle, right? Does it allow me to win late combats? Does it allow me to gather resources? Does it allow me to draw more cards? Does it allow me to go faction access? You know, and you should think about it from this lens, right? So I think that actually that was all I wanted to talk about, but I'll talk about one more thing. Um, what do the various decks want, right? Okay, so I talked about Fremen before. I've talked about Fremen in a video, and like people like did comment like, oh, so what's the point of talking about Fremen? So you have one Fremen card, you buy all the Fremen cards? No, kind of. Some of them are enablers and some of them are not enablers, and I would think that you should identify which of them are enablers and which of them are there to support the enablers, right? But what do the other various deck want in terms of like Emperor, spacing, um, and Benny, right? So the Emperor one is very combo heavy. You want multiple um you want multiple Emperor cards together, right? And this can be, I think, most seen through like uh Saduka coordination, right? I think Saduka coordination is like the biggest one of it. Um, so Saduka coordination, you can put it in. Let's see if I can pull it out. Okay. Right. So Saduka coordination is probably the big one, right? So you have more Emperor cards. You want to draw a lot of Emperor cards, and then you have a lot of swords, right? And then the other Emperor cards that are probably relevant are I think probably something like Elite Forces, right? I come to not like Elite Forces, but I mean that's another story for another day, right? So and then I think, but the one that's played the most probably is the one that trashes. I can't remember its name. The one that has spy access and trashes. I can't remember its name. What is it? It is Calculus of Power. Right? You have another one, then you can so in general, you want to buy like calculus and I guess calculus and Saduka coordination both are good cards by themselves, right? Um, but in general, you want to buy the cards that are really good. Hmm. So you want to buy the cards that are already good, then consider the weaker Emperor cards. Okay. So yeah. So with Benny, right? Actually, this is the poor man's game. Let me talk about, and this is because of cards like Tread in Darkness. I think Tread in Darkness is probably like the only real payoff for Benny. I don't think there are many other payoffs. I mean, you can talk about in high places, but in high places is card by itself, and you don't really need a Benny deck to play in high places, right? But Tread in Darkness is one of those things that if you happen to pick up, and it's not a terrible pickup. Tread in Darkness, if you play it right, would you want two reveal one dagger spice line, a stat line? And I think that for when I play Gurney, this is one of my favorite cards. I think um this card alone enables me to play Gurney, right? In situations where other people will not consider it. And I do think that the dagger stat line is very relevant, especially for Gurney, right? So this is playable, right? But it's not insane, right? It's not insane, and so like these when you have like Threat and Darknesses, then you can like consider picking up the other Benny cards. But more often than not, you don't really want to go down a Benny deck per se. The reason is there are not many enablers for it. There's like one good enabler for it, right? Do you know what the enabler is? This is the best enabler for it, right? Because this is a card you can play first, and you don't mind playing this card first because it's a good on play. Like if people talk about branching paths, yeah, but this requires an alliance. I don't think like any of the other Benny cards you actually want to play first. Even Price is no object, you don't really want to play first. I mean, sometimes you do. Yeah, but the only card you actually do want to play first is Bench as an operative, right? And so because of that, it becomes a very poor man's game. But if you do pick this up, you can then after that consider all the other many cards. You can pick up the other enabler like Truth Trance, but it is not great as well. So very rarely you would play a Benny deck. The other way you'll stumble into it is that you buy some prepared aways and then after that maybe you buy possible futures and suddenly it is relevant. But I don't think it's something that you can actively build towards and actually like win you the game unless uh you are lucky with some early threat and darknesses trashes and then after that manage to get out from there. But then again I have rarely see it play out well. So I would tell you to avoid a specific Benny deck unless you happen to get the extreme payoffs, and the extreme payoffs probably being possible futures, right? So spacing is very niche, right? There are there are some good standalone cards that don't care about whether you discard it or not. If you discard it, even better, right? But there are some good standalone cards for spacing, right? But the the only time you want to watch out for it, I think this happened in one of my earliest Taban videos, right? I think when I was playing it live at the first Mr. Beast, I was playing and I bought Guild Envoy and immediately I picked up Guild Envoy is this card. I think I was talked about it just now a little bit. Guild Envoy, this card is basically draw 2 cards. You pick up Guild Envoy and then you pick up something like Smuggler's Harvester. You pick up Smuggler's Harvester because there's a spacing tag, right? And the reason that it is good is that because of how the deck is because of how Uprising is, you can rotate into it round 3. So let's say round 1 you draw, right? Round 1 you buy Guild Envoy, you buy another spacing card, the Smuggler's Harvester. And then round 2 you play out normally. Round 3, if you don't happen to draw into it round 2, right? Which is like maybe a 20% chance. You play it together as a combo, and then after that you have a good buy round 3, right? So that is like very niche scenarios that you buy spacing cards for that particular mana. A lot of times you just buy the good standalone cards, right? If you buy an enabler, right, all the ones that you can discard, then suddenly you can consider all the cards again. They can pick up to discard. But a lot of the spacing cards actually are good by themselves, right? And so that's how you think about the spacing cards. And so I hope that together with this and together with like the information of how you think about certain cards or about faction access, about non-faction access, about being a wolf, being a rabbit, like I hope all of these help you to make good judgments on the various cards. If you want me to talk about a specific card, do let me know in the comments as well. I will try to help you, and I hope that this video helps you think about cards and think about, how can I navigate bad situations when I don't have great cards. Thanks. See you around.